Okay. Hello everyone. Oh, one second. Okay. Much better. Sorry about that. I forgot to turn the light on. Um, Hi everyone. My name is Rolando. I'm here today to talk about food safety. So yesterday we talked about kitchen safety. Today we're gonna talk about food safety. Um, so first off, I just want to define what food safety is. So to start it off, so food safety is can be defined as a scientific discipline, which basically describes the handling, preparation, and storage of food in ways to prevent foodborne illnesses. And it includes a number of routines that should be followed to avoid health hazards when handling food. So this can be summarized as food safety being the prevention of food illnesses and food contaminate and other health hazards due to improper handling of food. So why is it important? So I'm just gonna move this, hide it. Oh, thought I could hide it. Okay. So why is it important? Okay. So it's important because over the year, there's at least 70 million cases of foodborne illnesses. Um, 325,000 people get hospitalized over the year, and around 5,000, so a few thousand people do die over the year due to the mishandling of food that causes serious illnesses. Some of these, I'm pretty sure some of you have heard, such as salmonella, which tends to be associated with the bad handling of chicken, but it can be really the bad handling of any sort of meat, whether it's poultry, beef, pork, and then you have also with fish, but fish also has another type of problem, which is called the ciguatoxin. It's not that common, but it can happen. It does tend to happen a lot with shellfish also. With vegetables, the main problem you can also have salmonella, but you can also have E. coli. I don't know how many of you remember, but a few weeks ago, there was a recall of red onions from the home food delivery service. I think it's HealthFresh. Basically, the red onion was contaminated with E. coli. And when you eat something that's contaminated with E. coli, you may not notice that you ate it and you're going to have symptoms because it takes a long time for it to develop. But one of the symptoms you may have is a lot of diarrhea, which may turn bloody in the long run. Another problem that you may have is with water. So food safety is important with water because water can get contaminated with the same type of bacteria that are in the foods that you're cooking or preparing if you don't wash your hands properly or if you touched it and didn't notice it. So it's also important, like I said, in the kitchen safety to be aware of what you're doing and what you're handling when you're preparing food for your own safety as well as for the long run health and preventing injuries and diseases. So how can food become unsafe? So mainly there's personal hygiene, but here we have three different pictures and then I'm gonna explain a little bit better. But basically we have the hand, which is here we have a lot of germs, especially if we're constantly holding our cell phones or if we have a garden and we grab vegetables from the garden but don't wash our hands or the food. Then we have cross-contamination. So what is that? So cross-contamination is pretty simple. You have a cutting board, you cut fish or meat, and then on the same cutting board without washing it and cleaning it, you cut your vegetables. You're contaminating the vegetable with the blood of the fish or the meat. Then we have temperature control. So it's important to make sure that you have foods either you freeze your meat and it's properly kept frozen, or if you have it in the refrigerator, you keep it in the properly refrigerated. If it gets too warm, it's gonna spoil. The same in the freezer, it will spoil. And even if you keep it safely in the freezer, if it's kept for too long, it will also spoil in the freezer. So for personal hygiene, again, transferring pathogens from your body to food, so that's the germs. Then we have the cross contamination. which is the transferring of pathogens from one surface or food to another, which I mentioned before, and then time temperature abuse, which that means leaving things out of their proper temperature for too long. And then for cleaning and sanitizing, so that means you're not properly washing your hands or cleaning the surfaces and tools that you are using. So how do you keep food safe? So first off is control the time and temperature of food. Don't let food stay too long at temperatures that are good for pathogen growth. So we have two images here. The first one is for properly cooking food, and then the next one is for food storage. So cold foods should be stored at 40 degrees or below. And to be precise, 40 degrees is not really recommended to be kept at that temperature for a lot. For example, if you take out eggs, those can stay for a little bit, yes, because odds are you're just taking a few eggs out and you're gonna put it back in the refrigerator, which is gonna be below 40 degrees. But if it stays for 2 to 3 hours, you should throw away those eggs. Don't put them back in the refrigerator and think it's gonna be okay. No, it's not gonna be okay. Um, Eggs are very susceptible to viruses and bacteria. Then we have the hot foods. So if you have a hot food, if you cooked anything and now you're just waiting because you have gas coming, or you're just like, I cooked, but I'm not hungry now. So as long as the food stays at around 140 degrees, 140.1, 0.2, 0.0, or 140 exact, you can eat that food. If it goes below that temperature and it stays below that temperature for too long, then you should throw it away, or something that I tend to do, because most of the time when I do check my food, if it went a little bit below, is I don't eat it that day. What I do is like I freeze it, or I store it. A lot of times I just, when I cook something, I let it cool down so it will reach below 140. But I do that so that I can put it in the refrigerator, and the refrigerator uh, won't suffer because of the sudden heat change. But the food is still pretty much very hot. It's around 138, 39, 30 degrees. So it's still very hot. So I refrigerate it. The next day when I reheat it so that it's very, very hot. So it says 165 degrees. This depends on how you're heating it. If it's in a microwave, an oven, or stove, it's gonna vary. Microwaves heat a lot faster, although uneven, but they do heat a lot faster. So odds are you're gonna get past 165 real quick. So the next thing is cook foods to the proper temperatures. So these are the proper temperatures for food. So chicken and turkey have to be always well cooked, past 165 degrees. Here we have beef, lamb, and pork. It says should to 145 degrees. So 145 degrees is medium. It's not medium rare, it's medium. At this temperature, you have killed most bacteria, if not all, but there is still a chance of some bacteria growing. I personally do not cook to medium. I always cook to well done, because at well done, I know that there are not going to be any bacteria or germs on my meat. I also do that specifically for foods, for meat cuts, such as pork, because depending on the pork, pork can have certain parasites. Again, at 135, most parasites and everything is dead, but you still run a risk of it being alive. Because some parasites are heat resistant, some germs are heat resistant. That's why I always go to the around 155, 160, which is well done. 165 is well done, well done. It's gonna be, and it can be dry, and I know that's why most people don't do well done. Ground beef, lamb, and pork. It says 160. It should be actually 165, the same as chicken and turkey. Eggs should be 160 degrees. If you're using a raw or a runny eggs for a recipe, pasteurized eggs are generally safer. So pasteurized eggs are eggs that have been pasteurized, and they're usually so they go through a hot water shower and stuff. they usually don't, or at least I haven't seen them in the shell. I usually just see them pre-made. Also, like in the box, they're already scrambled and everything. So it's just a matter of you pouring it into the pan. And then fish and shellfish, really, it depends. Um, if you have a really nice cut of tuna, tuna is usually cooked almost like beef because it looks like beef. So it's cooked to 145. I still go well done. Um, and I do recommend always cooking everything well done if you tend to suffer from a lot of medical conditions or you have health problems. The last thing you need is to go to the hospital because you got gastroenteritis or some sort of foodborne illness, which can be very serious. And like I said previously, people can die from these. So next up we have is to prevent cross-contamination. So don't transfer pathogens from one food to another. So we have a picture. We have two chefs. They're in different tables, but you may notice that they're pretty close together, and one is dealing with meat while one is dealing with fresh fruits. You'll also notice that, and let me see. Okay, so you can notice here, it's a towel and it's red. So the red can be either from the blood of the beef and the person put it there, and then the other person's cutting fruits. So that can lead to some serious cross contamination, um, especially of salmonella. It's not salmonella is not that common with beef, but it can happen. However, salmonella is very common with the watermelon. So if for whatever reason, for example, the watermelon juice is contaminated with salmonella and it gets to the beef, that can get contaminated and it's very hard to kill salmonella. It can withstand really high temperatures when you cook. So it can become a very serious illness. The picture below, this is how it should be done. You have each person on a separate table with space between them. The foods have no chance whatsoever of touching each other, and there is no risk of cross-contamination or very, very, very little risk. I would rather say there's very, very little risk. There's always some risk of cross-contamination because someone can have an accident and spill something from one food into the surface of another food. So that's still a risk, but the risk is far reduced. So again, this here in these two pictures, we see that don't transfer pathogens from one food to another. That's happening here. And then don't transfer foods from one surface to another. Again, that's happening here, but it's not happening here. I apologize for that. Okay, so clean and sanitize. So it's important to separate these two words because something can be clean and not sanitized or sterile. You can clean your cooking pots and pans, but they're not sterile. When something is sterile, it means that it's been exposed to a really, really, really high temperature to kill off bacteria or viruses, or that it's been exposed to some sort of chemical, usually chlorine, or something containing chlorine or antimicrobial slash antiviral liquid. Here we have the person cleaning the pan. This is an industrial kitchen, so a lot of the time when you see this, this soap is designed to clean and sanitize to a degree, but then it goes into a separate water bath that has a sanitizing agent, which can either be chlorine-based or ammonia-based. It really just depends. Here we have a cook. He's cleaning his workstation, and a lot of the times the liquids that they also have are a combination of a chlorine-based detergent that cleans and sanitizes the stainless steel work surface or whatever work surface they're using. It's also important to note stainless steel surfaces are rather easier to clean. It's harder for bacteria to stay stuck in it. So when they clean with these detergents, a simple wipe, a simple pass or two of the detergent is enough to clean and sanitize. Again, it depends on what was worked on there, the condition of the table as well. But it is important to note, clean does not equal sanitized or sterile. Sanitized or sterile does not equal clean. If you use hand sanitizers, you're sterilizing, but you still have dirt in your hands. Clean means you remove the dirt, but you did not sterilize your hands. If in this case for if we are talking about hand washing, and I want also to connect this with the current situation that's going on so everyone understands why this is important both in food and regular usage, especially since it's been found that the current pandemic virus can be found in some, has been found in some foods and can last for several days or weeks on food. Okay, so good hygiene. Hands can transfer the pathogens to food. Hand washing is a critical step to avoid food contamination, and it should take around 20 seconds. Examples of good hygiene can be seen here. This is from a more poor community in countries where there's not a lot of technology, but I do find that this is the best way to, or more or less, represent what's happening. So in this case, taking out the garbage. In our case, we put it in a dumpster, but that's the idea. Take out the garbage, put it in a dumpster. Cover your food so that you don't get flies or insects into it. Make sure to wash your hands properly before you eat or cook. Bathe yourself, clean the house, clean your pots and pans. Very important. So how to wash your hands. So these are simple 5 steps. This one's a little bit more complete. So basically what you want to do is wet your hands, apply the soap, lather and scrub for 20 seconds. So when you lather or scrub your hands, there's a few things that you can do to make it better and faster. So this is a position that I learned. You put it like this, you're gonna be able to scrub here between your knuckles with your nails. That's also gonna help clean the nails. You're also scrubbing here like this against your palm. And then as you wash your hands like this, you're also spreading the soap around the top. When I wash my hands, I tend to go all the way up here. Why? Because sometimes this part touches the counter where I'm cooking. So I try to go further up. I want to make sure there's no dirt in my hands and part of my arms. When then you are done, you're gonna rinse for 10 seconds. And then once you're done rinsing and you dry, before you dry actually, you gotta turn off the tap. My recommendation is to make sure that your hands stay clean. Grab a paper towel. And that paper towel, use it to close the tap, and then grab another paper towel to wash your hands. Or if it's a lever, you can just with the elbow push it so that it turns off. That way there's no contamination. If you have to open it and it's one of those lever taps, you can go like this with your hand and use your arm, which hasn't touched the food, pull it out, wash your hands, and then with your arm again, push it back. It's gonna stay clean. You're gonna reduce any sort of cross-contamination. It's very simple. I know some people use hot water, some people use cold water. I use pleasantly warm water. So what does that mean? It's not too hot that it bothers my hands, but it's not really cold. It's at a pleasant temperature for my hands, so it's slightly warm. And that warm is also gonna help because it's gonna help get rid of whatever grease I have in my hands. It's gonna make it more liquid and easier for the soap to get rid of when I wash my hands. So now we're gonna talk about grocery shopping. So what do we have to check for? So in this one I have, it's a long list. You're gonna see, I'm gonna talk a little bit more into detail in the others, but just to start with, so canned foods and packages. So here we have 2 pictures. One is showing the date that it was packaged. The closer the date it was packaged to when you're buying it, that means the fresher it is. I wasn't able to find one that had the expiration date on it, but always check the expiration date. Some say that they will expire in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, depending on the type of product that's inside and how long ago it was made. Because Again, some canned products can last weeks or months in a supermarket. So when you go, always check that. If it says that it's gonna last 6 months, and for example, it was packaged in June, we're now in September, that's 3 months. So you wanna make, it's only got 3 months of life left. So make sure that you use it before those 3 months. Also check to see if there's any damage, any rust, any bulging, any leaks on it, on the can. That's a sign that one, the food's more than likely past due. It can be contaminated with botulinum or botulism, which is a super, super serious condition, and it can be fatal in most cases. Um, and if you see a leak, it's for certain, the can's for certain broken, it's super contaminated, don't buy it. Um, I do also ask that if you do notice this, let the people at the supermarket know because they need to then get rid of that. Um, and then they need to check all of their other cans and stuff in the same aisle to make sure that's not happening to the same product. Um, so when we talk about fruits and vegetables, you want to check for signs of molds or spoiling. So when you go to the supermarket, when you grab it, if you see black spots, that's mold. Now that does not always mean that it's bad. However, it is best to avoid it because you don't know if that mold is on the inside as well and not just on the outside. Um, and the signs of spoiling again is when you grab it, you may feel like you touch it and you feel like your hand goes through it for whatever reason, or it feels really squishy, then yes, it's past due and it shouldn't even be there. So let an employee know as well, please. So meats, these are more specifically for beef, pork, chicken, lamb. So make sure the color is bright. There's no green or grayish colors, and the sell-by date of the product. So here are more examples of the fruits. So for example, if we look here at the peaches, you'll see we have some peaches that are more or less nice. They have some bruises, but this one has mold. So that's this one. And depending on the type of mold, how bad it is, on sometimes you can buy some of these, but oftentimes it's best not to buy and just avoid it entirely. And that they just buy a different fruit. And then here we have the carrot. So this carrot is perfectly fine. Here we have this one. So you can see the person's hand touched it. It's mushy and the finger's almost going through it. This is not a good carrot. You shouldn't buy that. So again, the signs of mold, spoiling, a bright color. If you buy a vegetable, whatever it is, and it doesn't, and it's supposed to be green, but it looks slightly yellowish, odds are that it's old and it's getting to it's continuing to ripen, or it's just lost water and it's drying out and it's not really good. Um, Feel it. For example, carrots should be hard or solid. If they are not, they're not good. The same applies to a peach. If it's too soft, it may be too ripe or it may be moldy. Um, Most of the time in my experience is that they're overly ripe. So a lot of times when I do find that, I will buy a few, and when I get to my apartment, when I get home, I cut them up real quick and then freeze them because that way they're gonna last me longer. And I do this with a lot of other fruits and vegetables to make sure that I don't lose them. Also, something you need to ask yourself, what is in season for the month or for this time of the year? So we're in fall. So that means all sorts of squashes and pumpkins are in season. So at this time of the year, I look for those because I know it's going to be fresher than a lot of other fruits and vegetables that are going to be around. So it's a good way for you to also save money when grocery shopping. And you're going to get much fresher fruits and vegetables when you buy them in season versus when you buy them out of season. So meats. So here I have several pictures of what I was talking about with the colors. So here we have a bright red piece of meat. This one looks grayish slash green slash brown. This is not fresh. Now this does not mean that it's bad. A lot of times this means that it's been exposed too much to the air. So it's starting to ox, so it's turning that color. But if you do notice that the sell by date is very soon and it's got that color, odds are it's going bad. Also checks the smell. I didn't mention it, but the smell is very important. If the meat smells weird, smells pungent, it's not a good meat. Now, some meats, depending on where it came from, like liver or kidneys, those tend to smell pungent, but that's because of where it comes from. It's an organ meat, those tend to smell like that. So always look at the sell by date. They should also have a date that says when it was packaged. If it says it was packaged today, odds are it's pretty fresh. You can buy that. You can freeze it. It's gonna last you for a good week in the freezer. Or you can buy it that same day, season it, and cook it. You're gonna have it fresh, ready to eat that same day. Here we have in the chicken. So this is a nice, shiny, fresh piece of chicken breast. Over here, not so much. It's lost a lot of its color. It's not as pink. It's much, much darker. Yes, I know there's white meat and dark meat in chicken and poultry. But if you see a chicken breast, it should be like a nice pale color or pink color. Turn like this without cooking it or exposing it to a cooking agent, it's going bad. Again, also check the smell and the sell by date and when it was packaged. So fish. So fish can be tricky. First of all, if you buy whole fish, you want to look at the eye. Super important. The eye is going to tell you a lot. If the eye is not clear, like as if you're looking into the eyes of another person, then it's bad. So if you see it cloudy or red or just an odd color that's not clear and bright, it is not good. If you look at the gills, a whole fish that's fresh and good will have bright red gills. If its gills are not bright and red and they're looking more grayish or palish, it is not a fresh fish. And it could have been exposed to wrong temperatures, so it's good to get rid of it, to not buy it. Or if it's at home, you bought it fresh, but you forgot about it and you check it, it looks bad, looks weird. Um, get rid of it. I believe anything that looks sketchy goes in the trash, especially for fish and seafood. So also if you buy the slices, also you buy the fish steaks. Um, Make sure that the meat looks clear, no odd colors like we see here. The sell by date and something else that I have forgotten about and I didn't add it is here in this liquid. So when fish goes bad, it releases a lot of oil and fluid and it's almost slimy. So you do not want that. If you notice that, that is an indication that it's gone bad. So throw that up. My recommendation with any bad meat, once you've unfreezed it, is cook it, then throw it away. If you cook it first and then you throw it away, the raw meat doesn't tend to, the cooked meat will not attract as many wild animals to it as it would, uh, as the raw meat would. Also, you're gonna kill a lot of bacteria that way. So if you're gonna put it in the bag and throw it away, it won't decompose that fast and it won't stink quickly. It's gonna take a while. And then we have seafood. So I wasn't able to find a picture because seafood is really hard. And when I mean by seafood, I mean clams, shrimp, things like that. So clams and oysters, when you buy them, they don't come frozen most of the time unless they've already been shut. So if you do buy them in the shell, not shut, make sure that they are closed tight. The shells are intact, so no cracks, or they are not broken. So if you see anything that's broken, don't take it. Take anything else but that. Um, Sorry about that. Apologize. Also the colors. If it's shrimp, check the colors. If the shrimp is not done their own natural gray color, or if it's a cooked fish and it's not pink, it's something else, don't buy it. Odds are it could be bad. Also check the sell by dates like with everything. I can't stress it enough. A lot of times the reason we have a bad stomach ache for something we ate is because it went bad and we bought it after the sell by date. Supermarkets should not have anything after the sell by date, but it can happen. So always check it. And then, okay, so that's everything for the presentation. As a matter of fact, it is 6 p.m. So I'm just gonna let you all know to please go to the chat, fill out the evaluation form. It is important, so please make sure that you go to that. I'm trying to, oh, how does this, okay. Um, so I'm just trying to make sure that it's all working proper, trying to check something out. But yeah, so always make sure you check that. All right, thank you. There we go. So again.